With a heart full of grief this morning that I notify the Senate and of course the entire nation that peace of Plateau rural communities is in great jeopardy. This, Mr. President, is due to the resurgence of deadly terror attacks and night ambush of citizens by bandits. Many lives have been lost within the last 2 weeks while we were on recess, Mr. President, in communities across Biladi, Jos South, Riom, and Mangu local governments, namely Rawuru, Hepang, Jol, Wereng, Tashek, Rim, and Murish. A worrisome dimension of the attack, Mr. President, is that prior notice is even given by the bandits of locations to be raided. Such advance notice and knowledge of the attacks are widely circulated with the hope that appropriate proactive security measures will be taken by law enforcement agencies, yet the bandits undertake and execute their deadly attacks on target locations without fail. Mr. President, herein lies the agony and helplessness of the affected communities on the plateau. Mr. President, you are aware that the responsibility of securing all citizens is the #1 responsibility that the Constitution has placed on government. The inability of government to live up to this responsibility is what has emboldened the bandits and compounded the of the people. We shall not relent to pray for peace, Mr. President, but government has responsibility to enforce law and order. Until there is sufficient deterrence against criminality and lawlessness, terror attacks and impunity will continue unabated. Until criminality and terrorism attract swift and severe consequences, law-abiding citizens will continue to be at the receiving end of wanton attacks. As we talk and work to win the peace, government has to enforce law and order and protect lives and property of law-abiding citizens. Mr. President, I would be using this opportunity to ask for the reinforcement of security and their presence in the affected communities in Plateau State. And I would also request the Senate to observe a minute's silence in memory and honor of the lives of the victims of these attacks. Thank you, Mr. President and distinguished colleagues.
Let me remark here that the security agencies and other authorities should ensure that we maintain security in areas that appear to be flashpoints again. Of course, I agree with you. Recently, the security situation in some parts of the country have started to deteriorate. But I think our security agencies, the military, have done a very good job of improving the security situation across the country. And we commend them for doing so much with what I can say insufficient resources. So for that, we will always be with them as a National Assembly, as a Senate particularly. We have been very, very supportive and will continue to be so. And at all times, our focus must be on providing security and improving the welfare of citizens of Nigeria. So I also commend you for bringing the information of what's happening in your senatorial district to the notice of the Senate and indeed the country. Did you ask for a minute silence? Okay, 1 minute silence, please. May the souls of our departed compatriots rest in perfect peace. Amen.
Request from Mr. President, Commander-in-Chief, for the confirmation of the nomination of the following and the Order 52, subsection B of the Senate Standing Order 2022 as amended. Accordingly, resolves to resign its decision on the bill as passed and recommit same to the Committee of the Whole for reconsideration and passage. I so move.
I hope we all have copies of the report. Those in favor at clause 1, clause 2, clause 3, clause 4, clause 5, clause 6, clause 7, clause 8, clause 9, and clause 10 stand part of the bill, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Clause 11 is on page 5. Those in favor at clause 11, clause 12, clause 13, clause 14, clause 15, clause 16, clause 17, clause 18, clause 19, clause 20 stand part of the bill, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. In the Committee of the Whole considered the Finance Bill 2022 Amendment Bill 2023 and approved as follows. Long title as recommended, clause 1 to 31 as recommended, short title as recommended, explanatory memorandum as recommended. Is this a true reflection of what transpired in the Committee of the Whole? Thank you. Distinguished colleagues, those in favor of the motion that this bill be now read the third time, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. A bill for an act to amend relevant tax, excises, and duty statutes in line with the macroeconomic policy reforms of the federal government and make further provisions in specific laws in connection with the public financial management of the Federation 2023, third reading taken. And this bill is passed.
Clemency for Senator Ike Ekweremadu and 2 others. Whereas the trial of Senator Ike Ekweremadu, wife Nwaneka, and middleman Dr. Obinna Obeta has been concluded by a panel of jurors, returning a verdict of conviction for the aforementioned suspects in the case of the kidney organ harvesting allegation involving an Ebonyi 21-year-old complainant. Whereas the sentencing of the convicts was shifted to 5th May 2023 at Old Bailey Court, and following which the Senate, on account of the good standing of Senator Ike Ekweremadu as his former Deputy Senate President for 12 years running, and as the former Speaker of ECOWAS Parliament, and considering the enormous contributions he did make in the development of democracy in Nigeria, West Africa, and beyond. Whereas these confidents were first offenders and do not have any previous criminal records, and considering that Ekweremadu was ignorant, that seeking out kidney donors was a crime in the United Kingdom, even applied to the British High Commission in Abuja for a grant of travel visa to the alleged donor, clearly stating in writing the purpose for the travel visa. Whereas this Senate is not arguing the conviction of the Ekweremadus, as ignorance of the law is no excuse, but we are forced into these circumstances in their bid to save a dying daughter, Sonia. Whereas this Senate is not in any way appealing against the conviction of the Ekweremadus, nevertheless, it is joining them in their allocutus plea by asking for clemency in the coming sentencing 2 days away. Now, this Senate resolves as follows. 1, that clemency be extended to the Equeremados, considering that all of the convicts were first offenders. 2, that since this matter was novel in the United Kingdom, that a novel approach in sentencing of the convicts be adopted by tempering justice with mercy, as the publicity already given to the trial was enough warning to would-be offenders in future. 3, that considering the long history of good relationship existing between Britain and Nigeria, and considering that this is the first time the Senate is making this kind of plea, that the British government yields to our request for clemency for the Equeremados in their sentencing. I so move.
As we all know by our standard rules, this is not something that we are going to debate because it has come under privilege. But let me reiterate what our colleague here has presented to us. Distinguished Senator Ike Equeremadu served as Deputy President of the Senate for 12 consecutive years. He has put in so much effort in the development of Parliament across Africa and indeed the world, and was never found wanting. And therefore, what has happened is very unfortunate, it's very sad. I have written a letter to the British judicial officers or judicial authorities about 2-3 weeks ago, seeking for clemency even before the, what do you call that? Yes, to seek for clemency, given the history of Senator Equeremadu, and that I did on behalf of the Senate. I signed the letter and was also delivered to the judicial authorities in the UK. And we are now using this particular intervention to seek for clemency in the sentencing. The conviction has already been done. We are not quarreling, but we are seeking clemency in the sentencing because this is the first time that our colleague, a patriot, a great man, a great leader, a very peaceful man, is getting involved in this kind of thing. And had we all knew that this would be the case, certainly we wouldn't have gone into that kind of situation, because we are very law-abiding citizens and we respect our country and its laws, and so do we for other countries and their laws. So I want to commend distinguished Senator Chukwuka Utazi for bringing up this issue, but let me conclude by seeking tempering justice with mercy by the British judicial authorities, that when it comes to the sentencing, it should be considered that this is the first time ever that distinguished Senator Equeremadu will be facing this kind of situation. And this is also should be seen in the light of the relationship between our parliaments, our governments, and our nations. We promise that we will always make ourselves law-abiding, whether inside our country or outside our country. But this particular issue, to us, is a major diplomatic issue as well. So the authorities should look at the sentencing, that they don't give sentence that will be unnecessarily harsh. I'm not saying somebody should not do his work, but it's in order to seek for tempering justice with mercy. Thank you very much.
Annual financial accounts of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. The bill was read for the first time on Tuesday, 2nd of May, 2023. This bill is an important bedrock for harnessing our nation's economy and fighting corruption, especially in the lean years when our nation is borrowing heavily to fund national projects, and when great prudence is required to ensure that funds appropriated for projects and other services are spent for the purpose they are budgeted for. Today, every Nigerian is interested in knowing that government funds are spent for the purpose of approval, and with due respect to efficiency, economy, and effectiveness of public service delivery. The Director General for the Federation and his team spent enormous time to audit the account of the Federation and made recommendations which over the years have been ignored to the perils of all of us. Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues, the goal of this bill, therefore, is to ensure that a legal framework exists for the strict implementation and enforcement of the National Assembly timely decisions reached on audit reports of the Auditor General made on national annual financial dealings. This is to ensure that a level of seriousness is accorded to the audit process, while violations are strictly sanctioned within specified timelines. The bill will ensure that national audits are not just an exercise in futility, and it will be a roll call of any MDAs to understand that audit infractions can attract speedy and painful consequences. These success stories will be valuable crowns on the National Assembly and on the head of the Auditor General, making him a champion in the war against corruption. Without the stamp of strict implementation and enforcement of a timely, urgently imposed by this bill, audit report implementations will continue to remain difficult to enforce, no matter the thoroughness or efficiency we continue to invest on the exercise. Mr. President and my distinguished colleagues, I seek your support to truly empower the Office of the Auditor General of the Federation of Nigeria to continue doing a good job on his constitutional mandate of ensuring transparency and accountability in the use and review of government financial transactions. The Federal Audit Report Implementation and Enforcement Bill 2023 is a win-win for the government and the people of Nigeria when enacted into law. I so move, Mr. President. Thank you very much.
The processes and powerful institutions make it very, very difficult to steal money in the first place. Unfortunately, Mr. President, in Nigeria, I think the priority is on locking the stable door after the horse has bolted. We have placed an undue emphasis on corruption-fighting institutions like EFCC and ICPC. Nothing wrong with that, but it's much easier to ensure that taking out money or diverting government money is made almost impossible in the first instance. Instead of having a situation where it is so easy to divert funds, as we have seen in the various auditors' reports, and then at the end of the day, we try, most times unsuccessfully, to prosecute those who have done this. There's nowhere in the world where you'll divert 100 billion, 150 billion, and then be successfully prosecuted. You have the resources within you to hire the best lawyers and essentially frustrate the process. So I think, Mr. President, this is a step in the right direction. Let us focus on prevention rather than a cure that may or may not be successful. So I support entirely, Mr. President, the debate as led by my chairman, Senator Orogude. Thank you very much.
Thank you and congratulations to distinguished Senator Matthew Urogide, yes, my second son. And of course, the thinking behind this very wonderful legislative intervention. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, this bill is critical because even though somebody is saying post-mortem, I see it rather as something that will help to strengthen what we call ante-mortem. Because, yes, before, no, we don't call it ante-pre, we call it anti. The reason is simple. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, the essence of an audit is to prevent infractions from happening, and then when they happen, to also detect them. But detecting them means going back to curb the processes through which they happen. And I think, given the very thorough job that has happened in the course of some, the reports presented by our Senate Committee on Public Accounts, it is obvious that the moment there are no consequences, honestly, no matter how thorough you are, the auditing process will continue to be frustrated. And the good thing is, of course, Mr. President, you are more or less like the field marshal in this particular area, having served in that committee for a very long time and introduced so many innovations in that public accounts process. This will be an icing on the cake, because the moment public servants know that there are consequences for their actions, then they will become more careful. And I know when I was in service, I've had cause to appear before the public accounts. I know it's a very thorough and very diligent process. We are always afraid when we are coming there, because some of the issues you don't even know how to defend them. But I think the issue is simple. This bill will now give the required, biting power, that teeth. They said we back and there is, you cannot bite. I think this bill will enable the relevant authorities to ensure that people who really touch us got beaten by their actions. And so it's a very good bill. I want us to quickly ensure that this thing is done before we close this night Senate. We should ensure that this is one of the legacies out of so many others that we are leaving behind. With this, I urge my colleagues to support this bill to be part
of perspective for being a privileged member of the Public Accounts Committee. And as a member, with my colleagues, we lament severally when, after going through the audit or the General's report, we submit a report to the Senate in plenary, and after up to 1 year now, there's no action that are taken on this report. Secondly, we do see the attitude of MDAs, especially on audit queries that comes up. They see it just as a process, because they know at the end of the day, a recommendation will be made and nothing will be done. And it saddens one to see the quantum of funds, public funds, that are lost through this process. And as just my colleague, distinguished Senator just said, it's the process in this country of fighting corruption is much more ineffective, because we emphasize more of the anti-corruption agencies rather than developing institutions and systems. Therefore, it was a collective wish and will and decision of the Program Committee at one of our oversight and retreat to see this through. And I want to thank our chairman for expeditiously coming up, because it was only during this recess that we went through and we said the only decision is to have an enforcement process. The current law, the Constitution, empowered the National Assembly to receive the report, to make recommendations to the President. But it doesn't give any further process as to when and how the President must act. And as such, it has been dying. So therefore, this bill is very important to strengthen our institutions and to take the process to a logical conclusion. If put in place, Mr. President, it will be a deterrent for institutions, for MDAs to commit the infractions that we currently see. And it will lead, just as the lead debate said, to effectiveness and efficiency in the utilization of public funds. I therefore support the bill and urge that we adopt it for second reading, and urge the relevant committee that will be referred to expeditiously process it, so that this National Assembly, this Ninth Assembly, can have this as one of its legacy. And Mr. President, it will be a very good legacy for this country. I so support, Mr. President. Thank you.
Very, very important bill. You will all recall that when the chairman of the Committee on Public Accounts presented, I think, 2 reports of the Public Accounts Committee, we thought there is need to have a law that will compel the executive arm of government to implement the recommendations of the National Assembly with respect to reports of the Public Accounts Committees of the 2 chambers. Because this is one very frustrating job. The Auditor General will work so hard and interrogate infractions. The National Assembly will work, and at the end of the day, the consequences that are supposed to be visited on those that have decidedly ignored the financial provisions and other things that they need to be very careful about will not have any consequences or will not be punished or sanctioned. So it is like they are encouraged to continue to do so. This bill will put a stop to that, because whether it is through Public Accounts Tribunal or whatever it is, there must be implementation of the reports. And I want to urge the executive arm of government, and particularly Mr. President, that when the National Assembly passes this bill, he should assent to it, because this is one bill that when it becomes law will help in fighting corruption. And we want this to be one of our legacies as well as the legacies of the executive arm of government, particularly Mr. President. You know, this is not, distinguished colleagues, this is not the only problem we have as a parliament. If we look at Section 88 of the Constitution, we have the powers, we have been given the powers to investigate, we have been given the powers to expose corruption and inefficiency and waste. But that's why it stopped. You will say somebody stole money, and all that you will do is pass a resolution and send it to the executive arm of government, and then the executive will not do anything. And how do we make that part of the Constitution also bite by making provisions that when corruption is exposed, consequences are visited on those that are responsible? Because oftentimes we are misunderstood by the public when our committees will say somebody stole 3 billion, somebody stole 10 billion. Then they will say, members of the National Assembly, that's all they will do. Of course, that's all we will do, because that is all that the Constitution gave us to do. But we need to have further provisions to make it impossible to ignore when we expose corruption. I don't know, maybe it's for the next National Assembly, but we need to visit Section 88. When you expose corruption, so what? If there is no consequences. So I commend the chairman and his Committee of Public Accounts for bringing this bill, and we will expedite action. Chairman called for public hearing as quickly as possible, so that if it is possible, the President assent to this bill before the 29th of May, because it is a very, very important bill in fighting corruption in our country. With this, those in favor that this will be now read the second time, say aye. Aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Provide for the strict implementation of the National Assembly recommendations on the annual federal audit reports and for other related matters 2023, second reading taken, and the bill is referred to the Committee on Public Accounts for further legislative action to report within how many weeks? No, 1 week is too. 2 weeks is okay. 2 weeks is okay. We'll still be alive up to 11th of June. But if we can do it before 2 weeks, that will be fantastic. But you have 2 weeks. All right. To bring back within 2 weeks.
The Senate do consider the report of the statutory budget of the FCT of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria as amended, 1999 as amended. The Senate and House committees on FCT met with the Honorable Minister and other relevant officials of the Federal Capital Territory and deliberated on the subject matter and agreed on the modalities to handle the exercise. Committee procedure and methodology.
Chief Whip.
In carrying out the committee oversight duties, Mr. President, the committee visited schools, hospitals, Abuja Light Rail Mass Transit Project site, Goza Dump site, Wumpa Sewage Treatment Plant, Wasa Affordable Housing Project, Kalshi Water Project, Apple Karachi Road project, Karachi Ara Road, rehabilitation of National Assembly Complex, Lower Usman Dam, and so many other ongoing road projects of the FCT administration. This is to affirm the submission made by the FCT administration and to also ensure that the money appropriated to the administration 2022 fiscal year is implemented judiciously and in line with budgetary items as contained in the FCT 2022 Statutory Appropriation Act. Thereafter, the committee reviewed the performance of the FCT 2022 Statutory Appropriation Act and also identified critical areas of need for the development of the territory that will ensure improved standard of living for its inhabitants. In view of this, the committee jostled with the budget estimate, deploying funds to meet areas of critical needs like FCT support to security agencies, health and human services, development of satellite towns, city maintenance, education, roads, water supply within the territory and satellite towns, city cleaning, rehabilitation and construction of public buildings, transportation services to include Abuja Light Rail Mass Transit, provision of counterpart funds, appraisal of the 2022 FCT Statutory Appropriation Act, and appropriation in the sum of 607,752,023,580 naira only was made to the FCT administration in the 2022 Statutory Appropriation Act. Out of this amount, the sum of 76,769,904,000 naira and 57 naira only was allocated to personal cost. 123,382,310 naira only to overhead costs, while the sum of 403,778,736 naira was appropriated for capital expenditure. A total sum of 233,476,857,437 naira 38 accrued to the FCT from January to December 2022 from various sources representing 38% level of performance as stated in the table of the revenue allocation. Mr. President, with your permission, may I go to personal costs, page 6 of what we have. The sum of 78,135,703,531 naira, representing 15.54%, is proposed for personal costs for the year 2023, compared to an appropriation of the sum of 76,556,904,857 naira in this year 2022 appropriation. This shows an increase of the sum of 1,556,798,674 as against 2022 appropriation. Overhead costs. The sum of 116,976,164,567 naira, representing 23.26%, is proposed as overhead costs for the 2023 fiscal year against an appropriation of the sum of 127,603,382,310 in the year 2022. This shows a decrease, Mr. President, of the sum of 10,667,217,743 naira 48 kobo, representing 9%. Capital expenditure. A quick review, Mr. President, of the 2023 capital budget estimate are as follows. the sum of 307 billion 847 million 115,280 naira, representing 61.21%, is proposed as capital expenditure for the year 2023 for the development of infrastructures, with emphasis on completion of ongoing projects in the Federal Capital Territory. This shows 31% decrease, Mr. President, over the 2022 appropriation of the sum of 430 billion 778 million 736,413 naira out of the 2023 proposed capital expenditure. The sum of 150 billion is for Sukuk loan project, which was rolled over to 2023 fiscal year for proper implementation. The sum of 13.7 billion is for Abuja Light Rail project. The sum of 8 billion for rehabilitation of 100 schools in 100 days, phase 1, and the sum of 99 billion is for Abuja Greater Water Supply, while the balance sum of 126 billion, Mr. President, is dedicated to the completion of the ongoing capital project and other counterpart funded related projects aimed at enhancing socio-economic and accelerating socio-economic activities of the FCT. For the capital expenditure, Mr. President, the FCDA is allocated the sum of 156.1 billion. Satellite Town Development Department, Mr. President, is allocated the sum of 67.9 billion, while other SDAs were allocated the sum of 83.8 billion for their capital expenditure to address critical areas like ongoing road construction, completion of water treatment plants, and related facilities. Mr. President, observations and findings. The revenue performance of the 2022 FCT statutory budget, Mr. President, was 38%. This is a poor performance compared with the year under review. The overall expenditure performance of the FCT 2022 statutory budget was only 33% as at December 31st, 2022. The 2023 FCT statutory budget proposal decreased with the sum of 104 billion 993 million 40,103 naira. That is 17% of the statutory budget. The revenue items of the FCT administration is dwindling by the day, especially from some important revenue generating agencies like the FCT Internal Revenue Service, Abuja Environmental Protection Board, Abuja Graphic Information System, AGIS, and the FCT Water Board. The committee increased the revenue profile by 76 billion. Mr. President, the increased sum was deployed to sufficiently cater for some critical projects like the rehabilitation of the National Assembly, as we will prepare for some of you who will still be coming and those who will be joining you in this National Assembly. Mobilization for engineering infrastructure to Mitama 2 was equally put into consideration. Mitama 2, Mr. President, is a new district which is going to be flagged off before May 29 by this administration. Provision to cater for plots in Guzape district, completion of the ongoing provision of the solar light in FCT, among others. Recommendation, Mr. President. In view of the affirmation, the committee have recommended the sum of 579 billion 693 million 907,532 naira only as FCT statutory budget for the year 2023. From the projected revenue, Mr. President, 579 billion 693 million 907,532 naira only, the sum of 78 billion 135 million 703,531 naira only is for personal costs. 122 billion 513 million 919,108 naira only is for overhead costs of the territory. while the sum of 379 billion 44,284,000 naira only and 22 naira only is for capital projects for the service of the Federal Capital Territory Abuja for the fiscal year commencing from 1st January and ending December 2023. Mr. President, before I complete this presentation, Mr. President, I want to emphasize that due to dwindling resources of the federal government, there is the need, Mr. President, to put by way of advice and observations in the last few years or so that have been in the FCT, that the solution to the development of this capital city will rest squarely on joint ventures by the incoming administration in order to be able to maintain the standard of which Abuja was conceived and is being implemented. The cost of construction is increasing by the day and the resources are dwindling. Mr. President, in saying this, I must commend the National Assembly in the 7th Assembly when the National Assembly passed the Revenue Board. That is what is saving the FCT today. Mr. President, the national budget for this year was less than 20 billion. Had it not been the Revenue Board that was put in place, the FCT would have been a big problem. But more importantly, Mr. President, is the fact that the Revenue Board of the FCT is understaffed. From my findings, there is still the need for FCT to employ not less than 1,000 people who will help in revenue collection across this city. That is one of the things that is hampering the development of the city, because the Revenue Board generated just about 38% of the expected revenue, compared with what it was some 2, 3, 4 years ago. So it is compelling for the incoming administration, good enough, our government, the APC, to start looking at how to accelerate the development of this city by going to joint venture. The good news for Nigerians is that you are going to have an administration that is committed to infrastructural development under President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and Kashim Shettima. So I want to conclude, Mr. President, colleagues, in considering this budget, time is of the essence, as the two committees, the Senate and House of Representatives committees on the FCT, have worked together to present one version of this report for consideration by the two chambers. On behalf of the committee members, Mr. President, I hereby present the recommendations for consideration and passage into law. Mr. President, I must thank you very sincerely, thank my colleagues.
Mr. President, first I want to commend the chairman of the Senate Committee on FCT for a job very well done. My comment really is on the internally generated revenue by the FCT. The FCT has so many challenges in terms of funding, and I believe that internally generated funds should be one of the major ways that the FCT can address that challenge. Mr. President, I want to urge way forward that the FCT should look at the informal activities within, in particular, the rural areas of the FCT. There are so many informal activities that have been captured for various tax purposes. They should do research into that and come up with various forms of taxes that can capture some of the activities that are going on, especially in the rural areas of the Federal Capital Territory. Mr. President, I also want to urge the FCT to go into partnership with some private investors to harness the solid mineral opportunities available in the FCT. There are various minerals available. I know the FCT cannot do it alone. And I know that there are various investors that may be interested in partnership with FCT. Such investment will create a sustainable source of income for FCT on the long run. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
But I want to add that, let me also commend the minister or the Ministry of Federal Capital Territory for its adherence to due process and ensuring there's financial discipline in the administration of the FCT. That said, it is really something surprising concerning the fact that the FCT has several problems needing to be solved in terms of infrastructure, sanitation, and other requirements of a city of the status of the federal capital territory of this country. But yet, it has a revenue performance of 38%, which is really not, I'm not really comfortable with it, because I feel that revenue performance should be something that should go close to 70% or beyond. But the revenue performance here is only 38%, despite the revenue earning opportunities that are available within the FCT. But yet, even the 38% that got accrued to the FCT in the period under consideration, only 33% of the expenditure provisions were attended to, which means that the revenue was not utilized fully, but left without being utilized. So I want to add that please, whenever there is money available to the FCT, and we fully know that FCT needs money to take care of several requirements that, like as I said, infrastructure, sanitation, and so on. So let's utilize the money. Let's not leave the money to remain idle without being utilized. With this, I want to say that the committee should do more in its oversight to complement what the FCT administration is doing in ensuring financial discipline, so that we'll have the best for the FCT. Thank you, Mr. President.
I think we need to go into Committee of Supply to consider the details of this report. So, Senate Leader, we resolve into Committee of Supply, please. From page 7 of the report. Schedule recurrent non-debt expenditure 256 naira. Protocol Department 1,445,835,980 naira. Security Services Department 4,761,132,171 naira. FCT Treasury 24,823,213,820 naira. Economic Planning, Revenue Generation, and PPP Secretariat 1,746,500,108 naira. FCT Establishment and Training Department 2,109,772,789 naira. FCT Audit Department 550,230,603 naira. Department of Monitoring and Inspection 368,810,780 naira. Land Administration Department 1,549,512,744 naira. FCT Procurement Department 883,982,141 naira. FCT Directorate of Muslim Pilgrims Affairs, 1,628,809,102 naira. FCT Directorate of Christian Pilgrim Affairs, 956,485,721 naira. FCT Pension Department, 5,996,696,985 naira. FCT Archives and Historical Bureau, 441,226,639 naira. FCT Urban and Regional Planning Tribunal, 129,480,423 naira. Department Outdoor Advertisement and Signages, 708,370,292 naira. Department of Information and Communication, 701,906,209 naira. Department of Reform, Coordination and Service, 408,657 naira. FCDA Administration, 28,342,640 naira. Finance and Administration, 1,701,151,989 naira. Engineering Services, 981,846,227 naira. Public Building, 674,839,428 naira. The Settlement and Compensation Department, 215,457,074 naira. Urban and Regional Planning, 236,455,652 naira. Survey and Mapping, 255,925,104 naira. Mass Housing Department, 77,051,533 naira. FCDA Procurement Department, 123,758,221 naira. FCDA Internal Audit, FCDA Internal Audit, 43,471,284 naira. Public Relations, 64,627,741 naira. Engineering Design, 205,540,160 naira. FCDA Legal Services, 69,394,467 naira. FCT Legal Secretariat, 2,543,609,365 naira. Area Council Secretariat, 746,273,068 naira. ACSS Inspectorate Planning and Monitoring, 353,402,485 naira. ACSS Chieftaincy and Community Development, 590,516,321 naira. ACSS Primary Healthcare Department, 180,959,839 naira. Part A, recurrent non-debt expenditure as recommended. Schedule Part B as recommended, capital expenditure. Clause 1 to 6 as recommended. Explanatory memorandum as recommended. Short title as recommended. Long title as recommended. Is this a true reflection of what transpired in the Committee of the Whole, Committee of Supply? Those in favor of the motion that this will be now read the third time, say aye. Those against, say nay. Distinguished colleagues, a bill for an act authorize the issue from the Federal Capital Territory Administration's Statutory Revenue Fund or the Federal Capital Territory Administration account the total sum of 579,693,907,3 532 naira only, of which the sum of 78,135,703,531 naira only is for personnel costs, and the sum of 122,513,919,180 naira only is for overhead costs, while the balance of 379,044,284,822 naira only is for capital projects for the service of the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, for the financial year commencing 1st January and ending on 31st December 2023, third reading taken. Well, we hope that the FCT authorities will start the implementation of this budget as soon as the final processes are completed. Thank you very much.